Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior and welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat video. Now in today's History of Breakdown and Analysis, I'm going to be talking about a follower of Shinnok, a former general of Outworld and Blood God, Reiko, pre-Mortal Kombat. Now whilst Reiko appears in the 4th installment of the Mortal Kombat franchise, the Savage General is in fact far older than he seems on the surface, having been active and alive for tens to thousands of years. Whilst his upbringing and early years are shrouded in mystery, we do know that he originally derives from Outworld and was actually around during Onaga's reign, but it does seem like Reiko paid no attention to the Dragon King and instead put his somewhat faith in the gods. You see, after the dawn of creation where the one being was split into the realms, the elder gods decided to govern each realm with a god, someone that would overlook the life brought forth from the one being's body. And whilst everyone for the most part seemed okay with this, there was one elder god amongst them that was disgusted by this, that being Shinnok. Displeased with what he saw, the elder god attempted to snuff out all of creation, something his brothers and sisters were understandably against. Because of this, a war would erupt in the heavens, and it was so ferocious that it spilled over into the realm of mortals, something that would capture and intrigue the likes of Reiko. Impressed by the power of the grand deity and his capabilities, Reiko would in fact align himself with Shinnok, as he believed that by maybe doing so, his reward could possibly be godhood in turn. But regardless of his own goals and beliefs, the elder god fell to his fellow brothers and sisters, so Shinnok's dreams were shattered, and in turn fortifying his siblings, the now fallen elder god would be cast to the Netherrealm for an eternity. Now in the aftermath of this battle, Reiko was believed by many to have perished in this fight, but he had in fact returned back to Outworld, now currently controlled by Shao Kahn, as the advisor had successfully poisoned Onaga and was now seeking conquest across the realms. During Reiko's time and service under Shao Kahn, he had grown rather infatuated with the Khan's power, impressed by his brutality and ability to create such a powerful empire. Reiko began to mold himself after the Emperor, even going so far as modeling his armor and fighting style after him. Reiko's persistence and admiration eventually gained the attention of Shao Kahn, and intrigued by the potential of the young conqueror, he would be given the rank of general, sitting amongst Shao's high table of authority. Now whilst it isn't documented too well, due to Reiko's first initial debut being Mortal Kombat 4, it could be believed that he participated in every invasion Shao had begun during this time, so this could include the likes of Zartera, Vaeternus and Edenia, but again it's not too well documented. Now the longer he served by Shao, the more and more he grew infatuated with his power, so from here Reiko would really push himself, hoping to be acknowledged by the Emperor as possibly a worthy successor to his throne. Now this was definitely something that was one-sided on Reiko's part, as Shao had his faith in Melina, if he was to ever fall. It's here where things get rather interesting. Mortal Kombat 4. Over the course of the first 3 games, Reiko is absent from the conflict, as he understandably didn't debut until much later. But during this time, with the 2 tournaments and later invasion of Earthrealm, there was in fact a secret and sinister force plotting from within the shadows, that being the now fallen elder god Shinnok. Whilst Earthrealm was fighting off Outworld and the Emperor's attention now drawn to the human realm, Shinnok began to plot his return, and with Quan Chi at his side, the duo formed the Brotherhood of Shadow, planning to storm all of the realms and wipe out all that stood before them. But they knew that they couldn't do this task alone, so this is where they began to recruit fighters across the realms, and even offer Reiko a position at their side, an offer the Outworld General would quickly accept. But it's believed that there is a little more to it than just that. Again, sadly due to the obscurity of older games, whilst it isn't initially clear, it's believed that Reiko joined the Brotherhood with Shao's full acknowledgement, so he had joined them as a double agent, possibly relaying information to Shao when the older god would eventually attack. Now during his time and service with Shinnok, Reiko had grown an immense distaste towards Quan Chi. Although the true reason behind this is unknown, it is not strange to believe that he did not trust the Necromancer, or enjoy his rather snide attitude. Regardless of his own personal feelings, he decides to remain by the fallen elder god's side, and does participate participate in his plan of mass extinction across the realms. But this battle was ended as quickly as it had started, as Shinnok had not counted on the sheer power of Earthrealm's defender, Liu Kang. So once again, the fallen Elder God was defeated and cast back into exile. But what of Reiko? Well, during this time, it does seem like Reiko returned back to Shao's side, so he was still very loyal to the Emperor and still infatuated with his power. And this actually made things very interesting for the following installment, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, where Shao is seemingly killed and the seat of power is left open. Unfortunately, however, Reiko is absent from the roster of Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance and Deception. So this brings us up to his final appearance in the original canon, Mortal Kombat Armageddon. During this time, Shao had returned, regained his throne and empire, and currently has his eyes set on the Pyramid of Argus. You see, the Emperor had learned of the fire elemental Blaze and his godlike power, something that anyone could absorb. Knowing that he could obtain this power and merge the realms, he would begin to amass his forces, having Reiko go out to recruit new fighters. So this actually sets up Reiko's appearance for the conquest mode of Armageddon. Now during this time, the Edenian demigod Taven is on a mission to defeat his brother and obtain the power of Blaze. This journey would take him to the likes of Outworld, where he would attempt to track down Quan Chi. But this was no easy trip, as he had to fight through hordes of enemies to do so. As he went deeper into the realm, he would eventually cross paths with Reiko, who was thoroughly impressed by his fighting capabilities. So as expected, Reiko did attempt to recruit him, but after being declined and learning of Taven's mission to hunt down Quan Chi, he is forced to battle the demigod, having sworn an oath to the Emperor to defend his allies. So the pair do clash and Reiko is defeated, but it's not entirely something that he's too sad about, somewhat relishing in the idea of Taven beating down the Necromancer, as Reiko really did not like Quan Chi. Now Reiko makes his final appearance during the Battle of Armageddon, where he's on the forces of darkness battling the forces of light. The battle for the most part does seem to be even on both sides, that is until the Pyramid of Argus arises. With godlike power sitting at the very top, the battle turns into a free-for-all with everyone scampering for the top. This includes the likes of Reiko, but unfortunately for the general, he does cross paths with the Emperor, who does effortlessly bash him aside with his hammer. The fate of Reiko is somewhat left unknown, as everyone minus Shao Kahn and Raiden does die in this battle, but with his last interaction with Shao, it could be strongly believed that Reiko was in fact killed by his idol. Now this in turn does set us up for our reboot, Mortal Kombat 9. As briefly mentioned at the end of Armageddon, the only two survivors are Raiden and Shao Kahn, with the Emperor having been successful in absorbing Blaze's power. With nearly all other options exhausted and the realms on the brink of destruction, Raiden knows that the only way to undo Shao's victory is to send a message to his past self, in the hopes that this outcome doesn't become a reality. So the continuity is softly reset and deaths are undone. It is also worth mentioning here that we are entering a new era of Mortal Kombat, where events are significantly different with alterations and butterfly effects taking place. This allows it to deviate away from the original canon, and in many cases, characters appear far earlier in this continuity than that of the original game. Reiko himself actually makes his first appearance in MK9, but it's only as an NPC during the pit stage. And to top this off, he is name dropped during the second tournament of the game, where he apparently battles the blind swordsman Ken Shi. However, a victor is not revealed, and thus the outcome is left up in the air. But this is where things get rather complicated. Mortal Kombat X. Now, at the end of MK9, a number of different events transpire, with many of Earthrealm's defenders perishing by the hand of Sindel. Outworld's Emperor Shao Kahn also does die by the end of the game, and from here a civil war breaks out in Outworld, with Melina and Kotal clashing for the title of Kahn. But what of Reiko? Well, here are where the comics do come into play, but I must elaborate on this as the comics have been somewhat pseudo retconned. What I mean by this is that whilst the comic book line may have been erased, there are in fact certain factors and influences that have crossed over into the main games. The first is in fact the Reiko Accords, a non-aggression pact between Outworld and Earthrealm that was created at the end of the comic book series. The second is Shiva becoming queen, something that we do see come to fruition in-game for Mortal Kombat 11. Now with the specifics sadly not being disclosed, I cannot say what is truly canon and what isn't. However, for the sake of making sure that you definitely learn everything you can about Reiko, I will be covering his appearance and role within the comics, so everything is covered about him. So with that being said, Mortal Kombat X comics. During the comic run of MKX, we learn a number of different things about Reiko, as well as his time and service under Shao Kahn. One of the biggest differences as well in this canon is that the Ruthless General in fact has no form of affiliation with Shinnok, and thus is a somewhat true loyalist to Shao Kahn. Now after his small army impressed the Emperor by wiping out the Kaiyans and their kingdom, Reiko would be elevated to the role of general, standing by the Emperor's side as he travelled from realm to realm, slaying and enslaving its inhabitants. Fun fact, this would include the Kaitins, but things would turn rather strange. You see, ever since the desecration of the Kaiyans' kingdom, Reiko could hear a calling from the shadows and obelisks of the abyss. Whilst they weren't always present, whenever he raided with Shao Kahn, he heard a singular phrase repeated over and over, that being Reiko's blood reigns. Initially at first, he believed it to be his mind, him being lost in the heat of battle, but these chants grew louder and louder with every battle. Eventually, Reiko came to the conclusion that it was fate guiding him to become Shao Kahn's successor, something he was understandably still very invested in becoming. During this time, to prove his loyalty, he would serve and complete any assignment presented before him, even when he was paired with the likes of Kotal Kahn, someone he respected but didn't especially like. But this plan and idea of becoming Kahn would all quickly fall apart. Once Shao fell at the end of Earthrealm's invasion, Reiko's dreams were shattered. With no master and no clear future, as Mileena had become Shao's successor, Reiko was struck with grief and on the verge of taking his own life. That is, until he heard a voice from the abyss once more. But unlike previous times, this voice had a face to it, that being one of chaos, Havik. When Havik found Reiko, he sensed the despair in his soul, his desire for power, and knowing the potential he had, the Cleric of Chaos would utter the words Reiko Blood's reigns, cutting him with a Kamidogu dagger. Now it is worth noting here that in the rebooted continuity, the Kamidogus are no longer simply just amulets, but instead daggers tainted by the blood and essence of the one being. Because of this, each of the Kamidogus are tainted by powerful blood magic, referred to as the Blood Code, something that bonds each victim cut by the blade to an incredible source of power. Upon being cut, Reiko realized the greater power at his fingertips, and that fate was once again on his side, believing that his next step wasn't to become Kahn, but instead transcend to godhood and a higher plane of existence. It didn't take much convincing from Havik to have him want to achieve this level of power, and thus the two would work together, promised by the Cleric of Chaos, godhood. But in order to pull off such a plan, the two would have to go behind enemy lines. Reiko could only truly ascend to becoming a blood god if it was simultaneously cut by all of the Kamidogus at the same time, but each of these daggers was in the care of a powerful fighter. So Havik and Reiko would start plotting, orchestrating the kidnapping of Cassie and Jackie, the war between Outworld and the Shokan Kingdom, and of course the death of the Shira Ryu and in turn Hanzo Hasashi. Reiko's influence really did run deep, as he even seduced the likes of Mileena to instigate a blood feud between Kotal and Goro. No one was safe from the general's deception, and once he claimed Earthrealm's dagger from Jax, he retreated to his base at Shang Tsung's island, preparing his forces and himself for the blood ceremony. It was only a matter of time before the special forces Kotal and Mileena caught onto them, but this is exactly what they wanted. They required powerful enemies to enslave under the blood code for Reiko's ascension. That's exactly why they kidnapped Cassie and Jackie, to use them as bait and lure them in, and knowing of Mileena's bitter nature, she was guaranteed to turn up at one point in the battle. Now Reiko and his forces stood their ground at Shang Tsung's beach, battling the special forces and Kotal's army at the same time. The battle was both bloody and fierce, with Reiko locking horns with Kotal and the Ojtech easily being overpowered. The blood code gave Reiko supernatural strength that would allow him to overwhelm anyone in his way. Even with the interference of the Vora, they stood no chance, as Reiko himself even tore the chitin in half. Things, however, really started to fall into disarray once Melina and her Tarkatan horde arrived. The battle turned into a bloodbath, with Melina relishing in the idea of killing two birds with one stone. But Reiko's strength proved to be too much, and thus it took the combined efforts of Kotal, Ermac and Melina to even stand a chance against him. But before they were able to vanquish him, they were all knocked out by a corrupted Raiden. Here he would sit upon his new appointed throne and transcend to godhood, as the Kamidogu daggers were plunged into his flesh. Embracing his new incredible power, he grew an insatiable hunger, a desire for flesh. Believing it was part of the initiation process, Reiko would begin to literally gorge on the armies of Melina and Kotal, eating and consuming every single soldier. Things would quickly spiral out of control. Reiko's body began to aggressively tear itself apart, sending him into unimaginable pain. After slamming Havik into a wall, he demanded to know what was happening to him, and it's here where the Chaos Cleric finally revealed his true intentions. Reiko to Havik was nothing more than a puppet and tool, and most importantly, a vessel for something much greater. Every voice that Reiko had heard was simply something that Havik had wanted him to hear. Reiko had been played, and now that he had fulfilled his end of the deal, the cleric saw no need for his existence, and thus Reiko's head was crushed, revealing that he had become a physical catalyst for the amulet of Shinnok, something that Havik had been pursuing for a very long time. Now whilst Havik did seem like he was on the brink of victory, his plan does eventually fall apart, as he had not counted on Hanzo Hasashi coming back from the dead. Now because of Reiko's deception and Havik's destruction, the Reiko Accords would be created, and thus an alliance would be created between Earthrealm and Outworld. Now again, please do remember a lot of this is pseudo canon and somewhat subject to change, but with the comics having done so much for him, it's hard to ignore what it did for Reiko. It really did help push him front and center as an intimidating villain. It also helped him step out of Shao's shadow and kind of become his own character. So I do hope you have enjoyed this video on the history of Reiko. Thank you very much for sticking around for this video, guys. I had a lot of fun cooking this one up, as it's been a long time since I've done this. However, in saying that, I'm looking to bring these back at least once a week or maybe two, depending on the workload that I do take on. So you can definitely expect many more of these on the way very soon. I'm very excited to bring things back in full swing, and I will finally be breaking the format this year and finally covering characters that exist outside of fighting games. So the future is bright and there's so much more on the horizon, but until then, that has been it for me. So with things wrapping up here, if possible guys, let's try getting this video to about 500 likes, and please do not forget to tick that bell, as it's a fantastic way of supporting the channel and keeps you up to date with all of my content. But until then, that has been it for me. So as always guys and girls, please comment, like, subscribe and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care, and I'll see you all next time.